They say the pen is mightier than the sword, but in Washington the pen's a felony waiting to be stored. From Nixon's tapes to Clinton's inbox, every great fall begins with someone who thought, "No one will ever read this." So in a room where the walls were allergic to light, where the clocks ticked wrong and the chairs leaned right, sat men with the air of survivors of war. Not war of the flesh, but of emails and more. They spoke not of battles, nor tactics, nor blood, but of documents, leaks, and political mud, of paper trails weaponized, servers dissected, and men not convicted, but thoroughly wrecked. The meeting wasn't official because official things get recorded. And these men, for all their bluster and flair, were students of caution, if not of history, then at least of the parts that ended careers. They met off the books because the books had become the problem. They didn't say deep state, not exactly. That was for the podcasts. This was more spiritual, a quiet understanding among men who had watched others go down for the sin of saving a PDF. "They always think they'll be understood later," said J.D. Vance, not quite scoffing. "They write things down thinking it'll make them look thoughtful." He let that hang for a beat, then finished. "It makes them look guilty." Rubio nodded, not looking up. He had the air of a man who had once testified before Congress and hadn't appreciated the lighting. If they have the email, they can invent the motive. If they have the notes, they can frame the intent. Pete Hegseth suddenly realized he was still chewing something, couldn't remember what it was, and spit it out just to be safe. "It's not about being right," he offered with some difficulty. "It's about not leaving them anything they can quote." Then with a solemn nod that suggested this was a deeply held belief. "Truth don't kill careers. It's evidence that takes a good patriot down." They weren't angry. No, that had passed. This was the quiet, reflective class. The ones who had seen it all come undone when a calendar sync ruined everyone's fun. And that was the heart of it. They weren't trying to outmaneuver the enemy on the battlefield. They were trying to outmaneuver the archivist. Because they had seen it. Oh, they had seen it. Hillary's server dissected like a frog in civics class. Comey's memos waved like gospel by both sides of the aisle. Hunter Biden's laptop becoming the Dead Sea Scrolls of modern American journalism. Every administration thought they were different. And every administration left behind the receipts, even when they tried to take them. And so, in a warped triad of logic, the kind whispered in mirrors while justifying espionage with vibes, precedent fed paranoia. Paranoia birthed evasion, and evasion became wisdom. If there's no note, there's no leak. If there's no file, there's no peak. If nothing gets saved, then nothing can speak. They had turned risk aversion into a worldview. Truth was relative, spin was eternal. But records were final. Records didn't take sides, records didn't blink. Records showed up in court wearing labels and timestamps. Tulsi wasn't there yet, but her spirit lingered like a vape cloud or a quote from a Joe Rogan episode. They weren't cynics. No, that's too cruel. They were optimists, just no one's fool. Why should posterity get all the facts? Why hand your enemies historical tracks? To them, transparency was a death cult's demand, a ritual sacrifice at accountability's hand. The wise don't confess, they simply omit. They don't write it down, they don't even sit. And one by one they reached the same truth, that knowledge recorded is danger, not proof. That the noble mistake of the liberal elite was trusting the archive to make them complete. They didn't scheme, they evolved. Like raccoons learning to open garbage bins, they had adapted to surveillance as prey adapts to the hunter. And they had come to a conclusion slowly together, like cultists realizing the end times could be optional. The problem wasn't misconduct, it wasn't even consequence, it was documentation. Once you accept that idea, truly absorb it, everything else becomes obvious. History's not written by victors anymore, it's leaked in a subpoena or a news site score, so forget the truth. That's second tier. The real enemy's the file you fear. This wasn't a conspiracy, it was something more pathetic. An epiphany among the frightened, a moment of shared cowardice dressed up as wisdom. Rubio looked up from his lap at last. "We're not going to make their job easier," he said. "Let the historians work for it, let them guess." And that landed like scripture. No motion was passed, no hands were raised. But the doctrine was set. From this moment forward, the only safe record was no record at all. A nation not of laws, but plausible vibes, where memory lives and nothing survives. It began with a problem far too pedestrian for men entrusted with continents and war plans. They couldn't figure out how to jailbreak their phones. "I think mine's got a Pentagon lock," grumbled Pete, poking the screen like it owed him money. "Every time I try to download something, it pings the network control officer, whatever the hell that is." Rubio squinted at his settings. "I tried watching a YouTube on this. Step 1 was disable the MDM profile, and I'm pretty sure that violates 4 executive orders." J.D. Vance, ever the pragmatist, offered, "We could get burners, like clean phones for war stuff." There was a pause, brief, thoughtful. Then Waltz shook his head. "If we're all using different numbers, how do we know who's who?" And from the silence came the horror. "They would have to learn each other's burner aliases. I'd be Big Eagle." "That's what I'd choose," Pete said proudly. "No one could confuse. I'd be Marco Polo." Rubio grinned. "Because I vanish fast and I always spin." J.D. frowned. "No nicknames, that's a trap. They'll think we're mobsters. It'll look like rap. We'll mix up the phones. We'll forget who's who. Someone will text a war plan to some guy at Yahoo." The logic collapsed under the weight of its own convenience. "We already have phones," J.D. said. "Why not just use those?" There it was. No grand plan, no secret lab. Just the simple truth that the easiest path is always the one that leads directly into the wood chipper of history. "We can make a text thread," Pete offered, nodding. "Keep it clean, short, no specifics, just enough to coordinate." "We'll speak in code," said Waltz with pride. "Like the birds have flown when the missiles slide." "That's dumb as hell," muttered Ratcliffe, dry. "Just say the targets, then hit goodbye." It wasn't subtle, it wasn't safe, but it was convenient, and that's all it needed to be. The government phones were left on the table like dinner forks, official, polished, and completely useless. Their personal phones buzzed with the quiet hum of encrypted potential. Tulsi, not yet in the room but already in the chat, texted a smiley face and a bald eagle emoji. No one knew what it meant, no one cared. "We'll use our own lines, we'll keep it tight, delete when done, and we're all right. No logins, no channels, no oversight, just patriots texting into the night." It was no longer a government. It was a group chat with an airstrike budget. The only protocol was vibes, the only clearance was who you followed back. "The system's too slow," J.D. muttered. "They bog it down with process and paper. We're making decisions in real time, not waiting for some GS-12 in a vault to hit approve." Waltz nodded, scrolling through his camera roll, trying to find that infographic on Houthi missile sites he'd saved between screenshots of gym selfies and protein ads. The shift wasn't declared, it didn't need to be. What began as a workaround became the plan. What started in secret was now how things ran. And every step down was paved with a shrug because no one had time for the protocol tug. The war would be planned on their phones. Their personal phones because no one could figure out how to jailbreak a government-issued iPhone. Because burner phones were confusing, because assigning each other nicknames made them feel weird, because history in the end is just a list of shortcuts taken by men in a hurry to avoid accountability and still be home by dinner. And so as Rubio typed the first message, quick update on Yemen option set, a new system was born. Not secure, not compliant, but fast, and from here things could only get dumber. There was a moment of stillness, uneasy, unplanned, as they sat with their phones in their freshly scrubbed hands. They'd chosen informality, chosen speed, but hadn't quite factored in the paper trail. Need. J.D. Vance, brow furrowed, broke the silence first. "Wait, aren't we doing exactly what got her cursed?" Rubio blinked. "You mean Hillary?" "Yeah," J.D. said. "Emails, private channels, using her own phone. Remember those panels?" Pete scratched his neck. "Okay, but she was shady. We're the good guys. We're being efficient." "Ah, yes, the classic Beltway excuse. Same dumb thing, but with cleaner shoes." Still, the doubt had crept in, like a memo marked confidential that somehow ends up in a BuzzFeed article. They'd landed on personal phones, out of laziness mostly, but now found themselves in familiar territory where other scandals had once gone to die. "We need a tech solution," Waltz declared. "Something that doesn't require clearance or knowing things. A search for safety without the constraints, an app that deletes before it complains. Encryption, an answer both simple and sleek that makes you feel safe while you're dancing on leaks." "Let's just Google it," said Pete. The suggestion felt like a thunderclap of stupidity. Rubio nodded, pulling out his phone. "Yeah, something encrypted, something legit, something that sounds like we tried a little bit." And thus began the holy quest. the tech-age pilgrimage of the blessedly underqualified. They searched with the fury of teens locked out of TikTok. Safe texting for government people, app for secure war messages, how to hide messages from CIA, I am CIA. Does Apple Notes have encryption, asking for a friend, confidential bombing schedule template, free download, Waltz offered? What about Telegram? Ratcliffe shook his head. Russian servers. Rubio sighed. Optics. Then someone, no one remembers who, uttered the word Signal. It echoed, it landed, it felt like a solution. Signal. The name alone sounded like clearance, a sleek little app with military appearance, used by journalists, hackers, protesters too, which meant it had street cred and wouldn't sue. Ratcliffe raised an eyebrow. It says end-to-end encrypted. That sounds Pentagon-y. It deletes messages, said Rubio, thumbs moving fast, like Snapchat, but for patriots. Tulsi chimed in from a juice cleanse. Joe Rogan says whistleblowers use it. That's practically a CIA endorsement. And with that, the group's fate was sealed, not by reason, but how the brand felt in the field. Not tested, not vetted, not approved for the job. But hey, it had stars in the privacy blog. No one asked what end-to-end meant. No one wondered who maintained the servers. No one checked if it was authorized for anything above a parking memo. They didn't need proof. It was tech's magic hat. Put it on your scandal and it disappears, just like that. And then came the moment, the tragic reveal. Some of them already had it installed, logged in, ready to conceal. Oh yeah, said Tulsi, scrolling through her apps. I downloaded Signal during that Syria thing. Never used it though. Seemed weirdly honest. Same, muttered Rubio. I had it from that time we thought big tech was spying on conservatives. He paused, considering the irony. Still might be, but at least this way we can spy on each other. So instead of new names or anonymous tricks, they opted for real ones to keep the group fixed. Too many nicknames would just cause confusion, and anyway, who needs illusion when you've got delusion? Use your actual names, Pete instructed. I don't want to guess who Freedom Pappy 92 is mid-strike planning. That was one time, JD grumbled. Waltz, meanwhile, was not in sync. I'm getting a weird error, he texted, not from Signal. Something about a verification code. You have to let it access your contacts, said Tulsi, I think. Waltz tried again. It says registration timed out. Should I restart my phone? A collective shrug rippled through the room. The international sign for this is someone else's problem now. It was not a sign of caution. It was not a red flag. It was a group of senior officials ignoring the tech support cries of the one person they'd soon entrust with managing their secure communications. I'll figure it out, Waltz added. Waltz. Pete gave a thumbs up, already deep into his Signal settings, setting custom notifications for Tulsi and muting Ratcliffe. Okay, JD said, so we've got the app. We'll create a thread for Yemen. Keep it tight. Keep it professional. Just need someone to start it up. Silence, more silence. Then with all the gravitas of a man assigning the group pizza order, let's just have Waltz do it. Yeah, said Rubio, he gets tech. He posted that AI deepfake last week with subtitles and everything. It had good lighting too, Ratcliffe added. And with that it was settled. The highest levels of US power coordinated by a signal group soon to be created by the person currently locked out of Signal. But they didn't worry because Signal was encrypted, and encryption is a really cool word. Inside the head of Pete Hegseth, the thoughts were all dressed up like they were going hunting, but most were just wandering in circles. It began, as most of Pete's better ideas did, with a vague tingle of self-preservation. He was thinking about the texts, not the war ones, the other ones. Oh, if I could take them back again, the U up, sent at 10:02, the photo shared in misplaced trust, now redacted by the court and justly cussed. He blinked, then sat upright. Hey, do you guys know if these messages can delete themselves? JD looked up. You mean like instantly, like they vanish after you read them? Pete nodded. Yeah, like Snapchat for patriots. Rubio raised an eyebrow. I think Signal has something like that. I saw it in the settings. He tapped his phone. Yeah, disappearing messages. You can set it to auto-delete after a month or a week. Not immediate, but still. That hung in the air, like incense in a courtroom. The others took it in. One by one, they felt the same little flicker. A trial avoided, a leak diffused, a quote that couldn't be taken out of context if it no longer existed at all. JD smiled more to himself than anyone else. That podcast gaffe, that ethnic state, the tweet I tried to moderate, if only that could just unhappen, I'd still be asked to keynote Aspen. Rubio followed. drifting into his own little regret spiral. A screenshot once, just harmless chat, we've got their backs or something like that. The papers made it sound like plans, when all I meant was clapping hands. Tulsi nodded slowly. That NATO memo. I emailed it to the wrong thread, but it wasn't the mistake. It was the fact it was still in print when they came asking. Pete was already poking at his screen, so how does this work? Ratcliffe, always the closest thing they had to a technician, answered flatly. It's not default. You have to turn it on, and once it's on, all messages disappear after the time window you choose. Is there a 5-minute option? Asked JD. No. Ratcliffe came back. It's not spy tech. It's a commercial app. They just disappear after a month. Okay. But a month is still good, right? Pete asked. A month gives us runway. They all agreed, earnestly, not a trace of irony. 1 month to say what mustn't be said, to plan what mustn't be planned, to speak as if no one would ever listen, because soon not even they could go back and read it. Walt, still struggling with the app, texted in from outside. Should I turn disappearing messages on when I make the group? Yes, they all replied near simultaneously. Rubio added, let's default to a month. That's secure and operational. No one said, hey, what if someone screenshots something? No one asked, where is this data actually stored? No one wondered, what happens if one device syncs to iCloud by accident because Signal was encrypted? And encrypted sounded invincible. For this setting was a shield, ritual protection, truth repealed, the ticking clock on every phrase like go ahead or target phase. Pete sat back satisfied. This should have been standard all along, he said. Government systems keep everything. It's like they want us to go down. JD nodded. This way we can be honest, direct, without worrying how it'll look later. And that, dear friends, was the final key. They saw deletion not as escape, but as honesty. They'd speak more freely because they believed no one would remember. It wasn't about hiding. It was about feeling safe enough to stop pretending. And what is operational security, if not the comfort of pretending you're not being watched? Mike Waltz arrived like Jim Bro Mars with PowerPoints and protein bars, targets up, album shared, God bless the troops, I'm getting aired. He posted shirtless once by accident, no one said a word, it happened again, but now no briefings, no forms, no desktop lag. He did it all without a flag, just Waltz, calm, resolved, alone, conducting war upon his phone. They say I'm fringe, that I don't play, but I'm the one who saves the day. They stall and whine and paper push. I watch one YouTube, then I crush. He typed, Signal group set up fast. Clicked one titled, Secure your chats, at last. A man in shades with vibes askew spoke quickly from a rented view. Okay, step 1, open the app. Step 2, no code names, those are crap. Step 3, tap new group, don't delay. Step 4, add contacts. Here's my BE. Jeff Goldberg, just a name I use, don't overthink, just click and cruise. He did. He tapped. It all went smooth. He never questioned, never sleuthed. Jeff Goldberg in, no second look, just followed steps straight from the book. That's what they don't get, he thought with pride. I build things fast. I let truth ride. I do my homework. I stay loose. I blend the vibes with proper use. He named the thread Houthi PC, a little vague, intentionally. And now the crew, the men of might, who'd govern war by screenlight. First came Marco, old and slick, his smile rehearsed, his thumbs quite quick. A veteran of Senate scenes, he knew what Yemen package means. He used no code, just strike approved, and punctuated every move. Then J.D. Vance with venture dreams, a man who thinks in Reddit memes. The president's cleared, he wrote with flair, then posted twice just to be fair. He believed in truth if vibes aligned, and typed like no one else would mind. Then came Ratcliffe, stone and sour, his Wi-Fi strong, his sleep 2 hours. He sent the maps, he named the zones, and watermarking, not on these phones. Then Tulsi from her yoga deck. She lit a candle, cracked her neck. Her chai was hot, her vape a wreck. But still she smiled and sipped her tea. Okay, let's launch diplomacy. Then Pete, the brawler, turned sec-def, with 3 alerts and half a breath. Clock's ticking, he grunted, chewing beef. Just say the word, we bring the grief. He tried to send a Giphy, failed, and blamed the app when it derailed. Then Miller joined, a late-stage ad. The vibes went cold, the mood turned bad. He typed in Latin, quoted Burke. No one responded, total murk. We don't need him, someone said, but no one kicked him, fear or dread. Then Waltz paused. The group complete, the mission set, the hour sweet. Auto-delete was locked for all, 1 month to speak, then watch it fall. He checked the names, gave one last tap, and launched the chat. That's when it happened. Not with a boom, just one line across the room. as Jeffrey Goldberg joined the group. And no one ever wondered why or who he was, some intel guy. No one to ask, no boss to say, must be from the NSA.